Welcome to day 4 of our daily fraction. So let's fill in day 4. Okay, so our fraction for today. Our denominator is our total amount of school days, 180. Our numerator is the day we are currently on, which is day 4. All right, so here, now what we want to do is look at that numerator and answer this question. Is 4 prime or is it composite? So if we look, 4 is composite. If it's composite, we need to do our prime factorization for both the numerator and the denominator. So to do a prime factorization, what we're looking at is what prime numbers can I divide this by? Because remember, factors are those numbers that multiply together to make it. Okay. Sorry. And so we want to look and see. 2, 3, 5. Can I divide 4 by any of these prime numbers? Well, I can divide by 2. Now what we're going to do is something called upside down division. So the box goes upside down. And now I'm going to divide. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now we look and see, is this one prime? If it is, we're done. If it is not, then we go through the process again. What number can I divide that by? Okay, so we'll leave that one for now, and we're going to work on 180. Well, 180 is even, so I know I can divide by 2, and 2 is a prime number. So half of 1 I can't do, but half of 18 is 9, and then I put my placeholder. Now you might think, ooh, I can divide by 10, and that's true, but unfortunately 10 is not a prime number, and we have to only divide by prime numbers. But it ends in a 0, so that means you can divide by 5, and 5 is a prime number. So remember, we want to only think of those prime numbers, like 2, like 3, like 5, 7, 11. Those are the only numbers, and so on, that we can divide by, those prime numbers. So if I divide by 5, I can get one group of 5 out of 9, and then that leaves 40. And that would be 18. Well, that's even, so I know I can divide by 2. Okay, and I get 9, and I can divide that by 3, and I get 3. 3 is prime, so we are done. Now to do our prime factorization. Factorization, that means we're going to write it as an expression, a multiplication expression. Our numerator, we take all the numbers outside the box. We write 2 times 2. Okay, here we're going to go from least to greatest, so I have 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 5. What do you see that is the same in both the numerator and denominator? Well, 2 times 2 is in both. 2 times 2 is 4. So that is our greatest common factor. Now that we have our greatest common factor, let's go ahead and put everything into groups of 4. Remember, your groups of 4 do not have to look like mine. They just have to have 4 squares in each group. And make sure your shaded is not with your unshaded. We don't want a group of 4 like this, where you have one shaded and the other one's not. Make sure your group of 4 has only shaded in it. Alright, so there's all my groups. Now I'm going to count up my total amount to find my new denominator. Well, these are groups of 2, so I'm going to count by 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. There are a total of 45 groups of 4. And how many groups of 4 are shaded in? 1. Okay, I proved it with my model. Now I need to prove it with my algorithm here. So I am going to divide everything by my greatest common factor, which is 4. I did the shaded in groups of 4 and everything else in groups of 4. Those are always going to be the same amount that I'm dividing by. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at 180 in our area model. Oops, too high. Divided by 4. Let's see, I know that 4 times 40 will get me pretty close. This placeholder moves it over a place, and then 4 times 4 is 16. We have numbers the same, zeros a game, more on top, no need to stop. So I'm not done yet. I have to get to 0. So this is now going to go up here. And what times 4 is 20? Well, 5. 5 times 4 is 20. Numbers the same, zeros a game. So I have a remainder of 0. And then my partial quotients up here, 40 plus 5 is 45. Okay, now 4. Well, 4 times 1 is 4. Numbers the same, zeros a game. Now I still need to check. And my way of checking is the expression of the divisor times the quotient plus the remainder. Since my remainder is 0, though, the identity property of addition says it's going to stay the same if I add 0, so I don't even need to worry about that. So it's just my divisor of 4 times my quotient of 45. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 4 is 16, plus 2 is 18. That matches my dividend of 180, so check. Now I'm going to check the other one. My divisor times quotient plus remainder. Again, I don't need to add 0. But this is actually the identity property of multiplication. When I multiply by 1, it stays the same. So I really don't need to do that much either, because that's always going to be the case. But it does check. It's good to make sure. So my denominator is definitely 45. My numerator is definitely 1. So now let's go ahead and complete our data collection page. We are still in trimester 1, week 2. Today is 8/13/19, and our fraction for today is 1/45. Let's go ahead and get out our number line. Okay, we did groups of 4. So let's go over to that first line. We have 1/45, and it needs to be right under the line because that represents that one piece right there. If you look, it lines up with the line here. So we have an equivalent fraction here that we haven't written down yet. And 4 180ths. Those are all equivalent fractions. Okay, let's go ahead and put your number line away. Erase your worksheet, and thank you for joining me.